Today I'm painting Valerie, the paladin from Masmorra. I'll start by showing you the paints that I've used in this tutorial, and you'll be able to find the list of them in the description below, along with some affiliate links to Element Games. They're where I buy most of my paints from. They're cheap and very reliable, and buying from them will help support this channel. Without further ado, let's start this tutorial with priming the models. So first of all, take a scrap of card, and I'm blue tacking them to it. This stops the spray sort of moving them, and also it's really windy where I live, so they get blown over all the time. And then I'm going to use a primer by the Army Painter, which is a colour primer in Barbarian Flesh, which will just save me painting their skin colour in. So I'll do a few light strokes back and forth, and then once I'm finished, make sure you turn the can upside down and spray until no more colour comes out. Moving on to the base coating, I'll start with a light pink, Toxic Boils by the Army Painter, just to do a tongue. I think that gives quite a realistic tongue colour. I'm picking up my light purple by Valerie now to do all of the dangly bits. These are the sort of royal paladin cleric-y robes that are hanging down. And I've got my light grey, which is my filthy suit by the Army Painter here. And I'm going to paint her trousers, well, some of her trousers and her gloves. And just applying it with the regiment brush as normal, just getting a quick even base coat coverage. Not being overly careful as I'm going to be painting all the other parts of her around it. And doing the back as well in the grey, not that you can see it. Picking up my Machinegun metal by the Army Painter now. I'm going to finish her trousers where her arm was poking through, as well as these sort of screw things that are on her elbows. Shoes as well, and her breastplate. I actually painted both parts of the breastplate in silver here, but I'll go over one in gold later on, as per the picture on a card. I'm also doing a hammer in this dark metallic grey, making sure I get some paint in the cracks as well, which I'll darken later. There we go. And Brainmatter Beige next, which is my white. These are for her shoulder pads. Still using the regiment brush and just applying it quickly and evenly. Both sides of the shoulder pad and both shoulder pads. Being a little more careful now. I'm switching down to my detail brush and getting her teeth in the same colour. And I just picked a random brown that I had, which was the Parasite brown, a sort of light brown for her belt and her elbows. I think she's wearing some sort of brown undergarment. And I'll also do the stick for a hammer and the book in the same colour as well, leaving the edges to do gold later. All those little protection corner bits. Speaking of gold, here we go, and I'm afraid the video is going to get a little bit darker now as my lamp smashed in the middle of this tutorial, so hopefully you can all still see, and I do try and adjust the light and paint in the sunlight later, but for this bit I'm painting in quite a dark area. So I'm just painting the edges of a cloak here, as well as the middle of the shoulder pads and the protection on the book. And those screw parts that are on the elbows, I'm also doing gold for the screw bit. And switching to quite a bright yellow by Valerie here to paint up her blonde hair. I've gone back to the regiment brush. Just being careful along her skin lines, as I've already used a colour primer and I don't want to have to touch up any of the skin which is already painted, so I'm being careful around the edges, and then I'll switch to the monster brush to do all the safe parts and apply the paint very quickly, making sure to get under her hair as well where you can see. And now I'm going to move on to shading the model, and as normal I'll use the zombie shader, the light brown wash to do her skin, and applying it carefully here and evenly to try and give her a sort of tanned look, which I can then highlight up from later. Also applying it more generously to her chest to create the cleavage, and applying it to the greys and the browns Trying not to get any on the white on the shoulder pads because I don't think it's a very good look. It just sort of makes the white look dirty rather than shaded. So I'm going to use shading around all the bits of white instead of actually trying to get any on the white, and it will also save me a lot of time with the highlighting. Just applying a bit more to the edges of her face. I'm going to use a red jumpsuit shader by the Army Painter to do her hair today. I think this looks quite good with blonde. I've used it in the past, and I think it's a better effect than using black or brown. I think the red gives a nice colour in the shadows. So just applying that generously so it seeps into all the cracks, and lots on the underside in the shadow. And last, I'm going to use my black shader, my Survivor shader, as I often do for the metallics, and making sure it seeps into the cracks on the hammer, as well as getting it on any of the gold that she had showing, and just on the shoulder pads as well. So this is the part where I'm trying to get a lot of the shader to sit between the white and the gold instead of actually applying any to the white directly, to sort of give it a shadow effect, but it'll already look semi-highlighted, if not completely highlighted by the end of this. So I'm going to move on to the highlighting now, and as normal I start with the skin. I'm just taking the Survivor skin by the Zombicide, by the Army Painter in the Zombicide set, and I'm just applying some highlights to all the raised parts of her face. It's the first level of highlighting I'll do, so I'm being quite generous with it and making sure to get a chest there as well. And going back to the filthy suit just to highlight up the outermost parts of the trousers, as well as the gloves and all of her fingers, giving it a 3D effect. And you can see I think the gloves are already starting to look quite poppy, standing out quite nicely here. Applying it to all the edges, the outside of the gloves and where her knuckles would be, and the fingers on that hand as well. Going back to the purple, I'm just going to highlight the most raised parts of all of her cloths, leaving all the darkest parts in the crevices, so it looks like shadow, as you can see. And back to the Parasite Brown, just to highlight up the edges of the book and the stick in her hammer. And I'll just catch a little bit on her elbows as well, just to show where the light would be hitting. And the bright gold for highlighting the gold again. And just doing all the edge of her cloth, as well as now I'm painting in the breastplates that should have been gold the first time. And just catching the edges of the corner protectors on her book. And just doing the top of the screws again. And the front and edge of the bottom of a hammer. I don't know what you call that part. Leave it in the comments below if anybody knows what it's called. We'll pick up the white again just to highlight up her teeth, mainly just where the shader had caught it a bit. Same on the shoulder pads. I tried to keep the shader away, but it does run a little bit, so I'm just going to highlight up the edges of the white as well. Already most of the job was done for me by being careful with the shader. That was a quick job. And using Valio's Pale Flesh for the second level of highlighting on her skin. And this time I'm being very careful and just catching the very edges. So her cheekbones there, her nose, her lips I'm going to go round as well. And I painted a little bit of a nose up to her forehead, spreading out to look as though light was hitting her forehead. And this is Claymore Blade Silver, which is my light silver by the Army Painter. And I'm going to highlight up her knee pads here, her breastplate, the hammer's head, getting all the edges in this bright silver. As you can see, quite a lot, and a cube. And then I decided it looks okay, but I think that it was too strong a change between the shaded gunmetal grey and the gunmetal silver and the Claymore Blade Silver. So I've just got back out the gunmetal silver, and I'm just going to try and blend in the edges and make it look a bit more realistic. I'm going to move on to painting her eyes next, starting with a filthy brown, which is just a dark yellow, and I'm going to be putting the bottom layer of her eyes in here, starting at the centre of her eye and spreading out the chibi-esque circles for her irises. And then after that colour's in, I'm going to take this gold yellow and try and get the very bottom of the circles just to give a brighter effect to there. I'm trying to show the light sort of hitting it and pulling out the dead black, which is just black, painting in the pupils now, and finally taking my white and putting the smallest dots in the bottom of the pupils just to make it look like light's reflecting. It's quite hard to see in the video, but it does look very good in real life. They do look quite lifelike in person. So I'm going back to the moon yellow for highlighting up her hair, and I'm going to use the regiment brush and just apply it, basically painting the hair completely again, leaving the crevices with the shader in, giving a shadow effect. I think given the chance again, I'd be tempted to go through and paint it a darker yellow to begin with and build up the lighter yellows instead of using a shader. I think her hair's reasonable at the end, but I think it would have been better to avoid using a shader here. I think yellow, especially my yellows, are all quite runny and take quite a lot of painting and layers, coats, just to build up the same colour again. So if you get to the end and you don't like how her hair looks, do look up the Lord Fang video where I had a similar choice with the whites and greys on that model, and I paint it a dark grey and build it up to a white instead of a white and then shading and then bringing back to a white. So that's another method you could use instead, which I would go back and do. Just switching down to my detail brush just to highlight up her little front ponytails. Don't know what you call them, braids. Pass. Back to white. So I mixed some of the white in with the moon yellow as well, and I'm just highlighting the very front of her hair, so the top of her head and her eyebrows and the braids again, just to give it an extra layer of highlighting and make it look a little bit more realistic. And then I'm going to paint the base, as always, with the Moon Fang brown, which I'm getting better and better at saying. Got it right first time this time. So I paint the whole base with this brown, as you can see, like so. And then once that's dry, I get the Agriglan Earth, which is a technical paint by Citadel, and apply this as generously as I can, being careful not to get any on the underside of the model, catch it while you're pushing the brush under. And yeah, just try and get this quite thick. I tend to aim for, I don't know, about 1/2 mil to 1 mil, and then once it dries, it cracks like that. And there is Valerie in her final form. So I hope you like it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. I think I'm 2 subscribers off being able to rename my channel, something more interesting than my name. If you've got any ideas for a channel name, do leave that in the comments below as well. And I will be saving for a new lamp this week, so if anybody's feeling generous, hit up the PayPal link on the channel or subscribe to me on Patreon. Thank you all for watching.